Good evening. With tomorrow shaping up to be a big day in the fight against COVID, especially the prospect of a decision on additional vaccine doses for those who might need them. We're joined shortly by Dr. Anthony Fauci. We begin, though, tonight with the rapidly deteriorating situation in Afghanistan, the consequences on the ground of President Biden's decision to end 20 years of military presence there by the end of this month. Today, as Herat, the third largest city, fell to the Taliban, the Pentagon, on the president's instructions, ordered troops to Kabul airport. The Marine and Army forces, about 3,000 in total, will be tasked with helping in what the Pentagon spokesman calls a, quote, reduction of civilian personnel at the embassy. Now, to those old enough, this might bring back memories of the American departure from South Vietnam in 1975 with helicopters on the Saigon embassy rooftop. What may also be familiar is the strained language surrounding it. Listen to State Department spokesman Ned Price saying this is neither an escalation nor a retreat nor any kind of signal to the Taliban.
This is not about re-engaging militarily in conflict in Afghanistan. This is not abandonment. This is not an evacuation. This is not the wholesale withdrawal. What this is a reduction in the size of our civilian footprint. So this shouldn't be read as any sort of message to the Taliban.
Well, whatever it is, however you want to describe it, the American pullout appears to be accelerating from a country, if not on the brink of collapse, then certainly falling. CNN Chief International Correspondent Clarissa Ward is on the ground tonight in Kabul. Clarissa, what's the latest you can tell us about the Taliban gains and the plans the U.S. government has put into motion for the American embassy?
Well, Anderson, the situation is really going from bad to worse. 12 provincial capitals now under the control of the Taliban, among them Herat, that is the third largest city in the country. Also, Kandahar appears to be on the brink of falling. This would be a huge one. It's a strategically important city. It's also the birthplace of the Taliban, and so has a lot of symbolism behind it. Because, of course, they're seeing quite how quickly things are unraveling, the U.S. State Department and Pentagon now saying they're going to be sending 3,000 U.S. troops in the next 24 to 48 hours. Their mission is to simply help the withdrawal of U.S. embassy personnel. And the State Department was really trying to underscore this is not an evacuation. The embassy is remaining open. This is about enduring partnership still with Afghanistan. But I got to tell you, Anderson, that on the ground, people see this as an evacuation. And as such, it's really contributing to this growing sense of panic as the situation deteriorates.
So my understanding is there's about, and correct me if I'm wrong, about 3,000 or 4,000 people who work at the American embassy in Kabul. How many of those are Americans? How many are Afghans? And would the Afghans be evacuated as well?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, and it's a question that was being hedged a lot. They weren't giving any sense of the numbers. And beyond the people working in the embassy, Anderson, there's also the tens of thousands of people who have worked with the embassy in some capacity, who've worked with the U.S. military in some capacity, the scores of translators, logistics operators. They did say that 1,200 or so have been able to get out of Afghanistan with their family. But as I said, tens of thousands still here, mired in bureaucracy and paperwork, not knowing when or if they will be able to get their families out to safety, Anderson.
I mean, the idea of Kandahar being taken over is just stunning. I mean, that was a major point of operations for the United States. I mean, I remember the base there. The fact that, I mean, Helmand Province was hard fought by U.S. Marines for a long time. This is just stunning. I mean, what is the likelihood of Kabul itself falling?
So at the moment, the situation in Kabul feels at least potentially pretty calm and stable, but there's an eerie sense that that can change at any moment.
So there's reporting from the New York Times that the U.S. envoy for negotiations with the Taliban has been trying to get Taliban leaders to agree not to attack the American embassy when or if their fighters reach Kabul. What leverage does the U.S. really have to get them to agree to that? And would any kind of agreement really hold up?
So the main leverage that the U.S. has right now at the negotiating table with, the Taliban in Doha is airstrikes. Well, we've seen that that's got limited impact ultimately, but they also have the leverage of becoming an international pariah. Right? You don't want to be an international pariah. You want the international community to accept you with all the funding that could possibly entail. And I do think that holds some appeal to the Taliban. However, does it hold enough appeal to extract major concessions and compromises from the Taliban when at this point in time they feel they're very much in the driver's seat, they are winning, and as long as they believe that they can win this militarily without making huge concessions, it's unlikely that they'll do that. At the same time, the Taliban wants to see U.S. forces go. And so if it needs to make promises to, protect or not to attack these U.S. embassy personnel as they leave, or U.S. military personnel who might be facilitating that extraction, then I think it's likely that they might agree to something like that, Anderson.
Clarissa Ward, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get perspective now from a diplomat who knows better than anyone, almost anyone, what this moment means to the country. In his foreign service career, Ryan Crocker has served as ambassador to Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, and Syria. Ambassador Crocker, appreciate you being with us. First of all, your reaction to the U.S. sending in these 3,000 troops to help with the evacuations and the embassy potentially being relocated. You had reopened the embassy in Kabul. This has got to be obviously difficult to imagine.
Given the circumstances, I think the administration is doing the right thing, not to delay this, to move in a force sufficient to hold the airport, the embassy, and possibly some routes. That is what we are reduced to now, and it is very sad to hear that that our envoys to the Taliban are now pleading with them not to shoot at us as we retreat. When you think how this started, a peace agreement that we would somehow broker, well, welcome to reality. Reality is this, the evacuation, and it is an evacuation, of a number of U.S. personnel, but also a number of Afghans. And I honestly don't know how they're going to do that with embassy Afghan staff, and most especially with our interpreters and others who risk their lives to help us. How are we going to get them out?